Hey, this is Cam. Welcome to my coverage of the Stormlight Handbook. This series is all about showcasing the fantastic art, things I find interesting as a GM, and any new lore tidbits not present in the novels. We are picking up where we left off with Chapter 5, Radiant Paths. I think probably going to try to split these into relatively shorter videos comparatively. Shorter in the fact there's going to be less content covered, probably the same length because it's going to be a little bit more in depth in it because we get a whole bunch of cool info on all the Radiant Paths. Of course, these being the Knight Radiant character options for the Cosmere RPG. As they stand now, at least. I'm sure there's going to be some more content later on too. But we'll get into that throughout the start of this chapter. Let's jump right into it with this fantastic piece of art right in front of us. So this is from Justinia Dura, a representation of Shallan and her two altars, which is awesome. I'm assuming this is probably book 3 in Ethereal would be my guess. And yeah, it looks awesome. I've commented this a few times, but I love the fact that we get different artistic representations of all these characters. And this is spot on for that too. So super cool. Okay, so that is the art. First thing I wanted to touch on is unlocking investiture. So by the time I said, actually, let's see. So you've attracted a Radiant Spren. That's all good. So once you've attracted a Radiant Spren, you immediately get access to investiture, which is the simplest actions of Breathing in Stormlight, Enhance, and Regenerate. We'll cover those in a little bit. So they do get into a lot of detail. And so again, I think this first video is probably just going to be covering the basics of Radiant, shall we say. And then we'll dive into the first Radiant path in the next one. Onwards we go here, though. So managing Stormlight, this is a little call-out box that I quite enjoy that they shared. The TLDR of this box is that don't track your Stormlight based on how much currency you have. Just do it broadly speaking, and the broadly speaking that they do is to assume that they have enough Stormlight to fuel their abilities as long as they have at least 3 times their investiture total in currency. So currency being marks. So I'm glad that they included that because trying to track money as money while also investiture for your abilities just seems really, really cumbersome. They also do include a note that if the story causes a PC to lose all their spheres or do not have access to a high storm for an extended period of time, you can increase narrative tension by asking players to track their infused marks in Brome. So I like that they included that. Comparison, which I often make often is with 5e D&D. It's the most game I've played, and I assume that's probably the case for most folks watching, is as a GM, like not letting your party take a long rest after long rest. So if you want to really apply the pressure and you have a Radiant heavy party, maybe it's the Weeping, for example, or they're in an area where their money gets stolen. So just a way to apply the pressure that way is cool. But doing that in a case where you only have 1 Radiant is kind of just being mean. So some things to consider there too. Quickly touching on the Stormlight itself. So it requires 2 actions to actually breathe it in. 1 action to enhance, which is +1 speed and +1 strength. And then regenerate, you can recover health equal to 1d6 plus your current tier. So tiers of play, it's kind of cool how they did it actually. So it breaks down your level as a character. There's also tiers of monsters, or not just monsters, but folks that you can fight and have encounters with, which are also broken down into tiers as well. And so it's a pretty elegant way to do it. It's kind of like proficiency bonus in 5e D&D, but I think a little like less cumbersome perhaps. Before choosing a Radiant path, this is something that I really like that included. The TLDR here is before you decide what kind of Radiant you're going to be, talk to your GM. I do think for playing a Radiant, there's going to be a fair bit of homework to do it well and have it be really satisfying. Is doing a whole bunch of homework for your character mandatory? No, but in general, I think doing some will result in like a much better experience here. And it's tricky because I can see a lot of people playing this game and being really excited to do so. But speaking from experience with my game group, at least, it's really hard to get a lot of investment from everybody just because everyone's schedules are so busy. So it's kind of a double-edged sword here. But talk to your GM because like I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this talking about backstories and characters before, is like leave a bunch of holes, like have the rough sketch of what you want to have happen and let the GM fill it in. It's like it's the difference between watching a movie that you've already seen before and watching a trailer that you're really excited for and then getting to live that adventure for the first time. I think that might be the most apt comparison. Attracting a sprend is a big part of it, which is, once again, talk to your GM about how that's all going to go, which is good. And let's move on here. So, oops, onwards we go. That was the wrong button. Cool. So swearing ideals, obviously a key proponent of becoming a Radiant character. And I wonder, let's see. So saying the first, all right. So when you swear your first ideal, you commit, but before you get, you and your sprend, one sec, I just want to read one thing. Because I read this before, and never mind. There's a part I was looking for specifically, which made it like you need to kind of do homework to really figure it out, but I'm missing it here. So we shall continue and instead look at some fun, awesome art. So example of progression as a Radiant as illustrated by Kaladin's adventure through the first 4 books here. Does a good job. It also does a pretty good job talking about what all the ideals are and how to do them. So I like that. We'll move on to a couple of really cool sections here. So the 5th ideal, only a handful of modern Knights Radiants have sworn the 4th ideal. While each Order of Radiants has a 5th ideal, it hasn't been spoken by any living person for over 2,000 years. These words are lost to time, and characters in this game can't achieve it yet. So I could have just TLDR'd this too, but a fun little lore reason for basically these character options aren't available in this presentation. We'll get them, I'm sure, but my guess is it'll probably be sometime far off in the future. We'll probably after Stormlight 6, which is, God, I think a minimum 4 years away or something like that, maybe more. Maybe 6, I can't remember how long Brando said it was going to be, but it's going to be a hot minute. And I assume we'll get some more Stormlight stuff then, which will probably include the 5th ideals and other stuff too, but nice that they included that. Forsaking your ideals. So there's always the old meme on like Baldur's Gate 3 and 5e D&D of being the paladin and not being able to uphold your oath. It's not something I've experienced at any tables I've played or GM'd, but I think with Radiance it is definitely going to be an important consideration for a few different reasons. So this is another example of talk to your GM, set expectations, because I could see it pretty easy to just be sitting around having fun at the table, do something kind of silly and get a bunch of laughs. And in the game world, it's something that's totally against your Radiant path. But in the moment, it was just a fun slap bit of comedy and humor or whatever. Like it was a good fun time. If you're not ready for it to be like a big narrative consequence, that should be kind of called out by the GM. And then also who tracks these two. So I guess I'm getting ahead of myself here. So the first time you act against your ideals, nothing occurs. No one's perfect. Mistakes can be forgiven. Second time, if you act the second time, your bond weakens. You lose access to your highest ideals and its benefits. And you also lose access to any talents that with that ideal as a prerequisite. So then it goes on from there. So the gist is expectations with the GM and also keeping track of these two. So if it were my table and I was GMing it, and so again, it's like a lot of homework because you as a player need to be cognizant of this. The GM also needs to be cognizant of your specific order that you're being and keep track of that. So I think if I was GMing it and there is something that happened at the table that seemed against the ideals, my gut feeling is to probably call it out and be like, hey, just a heads up, like this thing that you're doing, I understand why you want to do it, but it is also actively against your oaths. Do you want to do this and have it be a narrative thing, or are you just trying to just have a fun moment at the table? And just treat it that way, because I think it would really suck to be playing and do something kind of fun, everyone laughs, it's all a good time, and be like, jump into an encounter and your mechanics that you're going to use don't work and it wasn't something that you're expecting. So it's tricky because like looking at the piece of art here, we'll touch on in a sec here too, like Kaladin's journey in book 2 is so rewarding. Some beats are like, what? Like some parts are like, what are you doing, man? Like, how can you be doing this? And the payoff is fantastic. So like if you can capture that kind of story and you're in for it and that's what you want to do, Heck yes, that's fantastic. But like, if you're just there to have fun and your GM's penalizing you from having fun, that's a conversation that needs to be had. Kind of blabbed on that probably a little bit longer than I did, or than I needed to, but I did think it was worth sharing. Switching first ideal talent. So like they included this too. So on your journey to speaking the first ideal, you or the GM might conclude your character isn't compatible with the philosophy of the order you initially wanted to join. If you've already chosen a first ideal talent, when that happens, you can switch your current first ideal talent after a long rest, instead choosing a different order that may be a better fit. From a narrative perspective, this attracts a radiant spren of a different type. However, when you switch, you can keep any milestones you've already recorded towards your speak the first word goal. So the speak the first ideal goal was what I was trying to find earlier, and I couldn't find it. I'm sure it's there. I probably just missed it. But again, that's just talking about like homework you need to do to play a radiant, basically. But this bit here, what I like about it is you're not stuck into the specific class choices. Speaking from experience, sometimes you get grand ideas about envisioning a character, and it just ain't it. So being able to switch things up, that's great. Narratively, I also love the idea of this getting tied into a character's journey where, do you feel bad about this? Maybe, maybe not. But that Spren should have feelings about it. We see in the first books that like brand new Spren in the physical realm usually barely have any sentience or sapience at all, and they're just kind of like trying to find themselves again. And so throwing one of these Spren to the wayside is really setting them back. Like they are either going to be lost without any like a mind or a brain for who knows how long in the physical world, or they'll be put back into Shadesmar. And so the narrative consequences of that could be really interesting. Like maybe it doesn't necessarily need to be like violent against you, but having repercussions there could be really interesting. Things that come to mind is personal vendetta. They're just out to spite you, or they're out to try to do something against your party, or a what's the word for it? An institution that you're a part of, or even your family. Who knows? So just some narrative consequences there, I think, would be a lot of fun to explore. Lastly, this fantastic art is just so good. I love the coloration that they chose. It's probably book 1, book 2, obviously Cal on his radiant journey there. Love it very much. And the facial hair looks so good. Okay, onwards we go. So another box call out here. Also, just a quick shout out here for the basic Spren abilities. Each radiant Spren has, I don't know if each radiant Spren has their own unique ability or it's based on the surges they have. I'm not sure, but each Radiant Spren does have a different ability too, which is cool. Bonding multiple Radiant Spren. So spoiler for book 4, not book 5, so I'm not too worried about sharing it, but we obviously know that Shallan has 2 Radiant Spren, which is a really cool revelation. And Brotherwise has done a really good job of including, or at least mentioning, pretty much anything that we've seen as how viable it is in play. So this is a great example of that. And it goes a little further too, which is really cool. So we'll read through this. Though incredibly uncommon, it's possible to bond multiple Radiant Spren, either 2 of the same type or even 2 different types. While each PC can usually only join 1 Radiant path, you and your GM can make an exception if it fits the story. For each Spren bond, you must speak and maintain new oaths as described below. For the same type of Spren, if you're bonding a second Spren of the same type as your existing Spren bond, that's just a great example of wordiness for RPG specificity rules sake. I'm sure that could be written differently, but if it was written differently, it could probably be misconstrued too. So it's rulebook writing at its finest, basically. You don't need to choose your existing. Sorry, that was a bit of a tangent, by the way. It was just funny reading it out loud. You don't need to choose your existing ideal talents a second time, but you must again progress through your ideal goals and speak the ideals in a unique way under new circumstances, reflecting how you've changed since you swore oaths a previous time. Any future ideals you swear can count towards all your Spren bonds of that type, though each Spren must accept the words. Once you complete the goal, speak the third ideal, you can summon 2 of your Spren who accepted those words, allowing you to dual wield Radiant Shard Blades, and you can summon them both using this single interact action. How cool is that? I can picture that basically like being a very power gamer move, but there's also so much narrative nuance that needs to go in to make it happen. It would be a really fun journey to be on. So potential really fun, satisfying character arc. Challenge to do for sure, but like, I love that they included that. For Spren of a different type, if you're bonding a second Spren, we're just going to skip past it because once again, that's all rules jargon. By choosing its first ideal, Okay, you need to start from the beginning, choosing its first ideal for the second one. Once you've attained the third ideal bond with your original path and the new one, you can summon both Spren as dual-wielded Radiant Shard Blades for the same thing. The inherent contradictions of many Order's philosophies make it nearly impossible to maintain both bonds, so few Radiants attempt to bond multiple Spren. So, again, challenging to do, but it could make a really fun character concept where kind of like devil's advocate on the shoulder of two different philosophies and the kind of push and pull between them could be really compelling. If you're trying to do it specifically to gun to having two Radiant Blades, maybe a little bit less compelling, and then probably doing two of the same spread makes more sense. But the kind of push and pull is really interesting. It kind of reminds me of City of Mist. If anyone's familiar with that game, it's very narrative, and like narrative tags are used in place of stats basically. And I can't remember specifically if, so a really quick summary there is your characters are made of two main parts. One is just your mundane human nature of like, what's your day job? And then also some sort of crazy powerful spiritual embodiment of whatever the heck you want to be. It's crazy how narrative and wide open it can get. And so the more you use your either spiritual side, and it doesn't necessarily just need to be spiritual, but like that's just a good summary, or your human side, it begins to either overpower or power up the other side. And so it's a really cool push-pull mechanic. And so same kind of thing here. It could be a really interesting story. Moving on. So we have a awesome piece of artwork of all of the Radiant paths here as they're described, like the Knights of Radiance. So on the inside is the Knights of Radiance emblem. Then we have all of the various surges, which have nice little lines to the Radiant orders that get to utilize those surges, which is a great touch. It's a really, really well done piece of, like, it's a piece of art, but it's also like a useful thing to have too. And then beneath that, I think this piece is actually on the GM screen too, but it's a list of all the orders, their spren, which surges they have, and a summary of their philosophy. And the summary of the philosophy is really well done. Considering it's just a short sentence, it's a great summary. Okay, and onwards we go to that is going to be the end of today's video, actually. I just figured this is probably already running long enough, and it'd be nice to do like a dedicated, I'm going to guess like maybe 2, maybe 3 orders of Radiant per video for the next stuff. And so yeah, I think we'll cut off here. Really quick TLDR for what I made a comment on is I love the quick summary here. They did a great job with that. And then there's a lot of cool info. Reading through it all, as someone who's read, I think, every single Cosmere thing to date, except White Sand, actually. There's very little new information, and they summarize everything that we know quite nicely, so it's nice to have a summary of what we know to date all in one place. But I was really hoping for some more juicy tidbits. I haven't seen any offhand yet, but there is lots of cool stuff, so we'll touch on those and go from there next week. Yeah, so thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time. Bye!